Hi, I'm Brent of Win Against All Odds, here to inspire you. And we're here to inspire men today. And we're here to talk about men's suicide. But firstly, I'd like to thank my sponsor, Crestlink, for coming on board. And I've got a really special guest today, James Grima. I've worked with James at Tony Robbins events, and he just today has launched this fantastic program, Man Online, to help men. And James got a bit of a story himself where he's been trying to take his own life. And also just on the weekend, one of my good mates' wife's brother tried to take his life as well. So it's around everyone, and being a man, I'm sure James will back me up on this, but guys don't talk about stuff. So I'm just going to throw it out there now at the start. If any man out there is having a problem, jump on this Man Online program, call your mates, call your mum, call your dad, whoever you can call, and just tell them. And it doesn't have to make sense. So guys, just say it. And isn't it funny, James, that guys don't have a problem speaking when they've had about 50 beers under the belt, but we need them to speak when they're at home by themselves and maybe feeling a bit lonely and down. So welcome, James.
Thanks for having me, Brent. Appreciate being here, and hello to your listeners and viewers. It's a great point that you raise, and I imagine that there's not too many of your viewers and listeners that have not experienced directly or had a close person to them that has attempted to take their life. I was not aware of the exact number. I knew it was high.
Yep.
I found out recently through the Lifeline stats that were released that there's 65,000. That's 65,000, nearly a three-quarters of the MCG capacity that of Australians that have an attempt on their life each year. And the statistics are terrible. And I echo your message that men, if you're listening, women as well, of course, men tend to be far more resistant to any self-help behaviors. We think it's tough. Men, it's not tough keeping everything in. It might feel tough, it might seem tough, but the real courage is, of course, taking that step to pick up the phone and let someone know, because you are loved, you are valued, you are honored, and you're very special. And if for any reason that you don't feel the same way, then there is people around you. There are services that you can call. And Brent, well done for spreading that message this morning.
No worries. Well, I've had experience, and my little sister took her own life in January 2017, Renee. And you've had that experience as well, James. Do you feel like expanding on that? Because you've been there.
Yeah, I have. On the topic of sisters, my sister took her life actually it was just over 30 years ago now. And that happened. I remember I was at home. I was 18. I just turned 18. I was 18 in like 5 days. And this is a time, Brent, well before mobile phones. So the home phone rang, and I answered it, and the person on the other end asked who I was and how old I was. And of course, I just turned 18, so I was very proud. And I very proudly said, I'm 18. And he said, well, in that case, actually, firstly, he'd asked if my mum was home, and she wasn't. She was out doing groceries, and I was the only person home. And he said, well, in that case, being that you're 18 and you're an adult, I can share this news with you. And he shared that my sister had taken her life. He was calling from a Melbourne hospital where my sister was a patient, and she'd climbed up onto the roof and jumped off and died instantly. It was deliberate. And I remember receiving that news, and just, I didn't know what to do. And there were no mobile phones, so I had to sit on that news for a period of time until my mum returned. I have another sister. I called her immediately, And I said, please come over. This is what's happened. I need some help to share this news with our mum. I remember my mum walked in the door. She was holding groceries. And it was like she knew that there was some bad news coming. Perhaps it was the look on our faces. And I can remember, even though it's 30 years ago, I can remember like it was yesterday, sharing that news and seeing her face. She dropped the grocery bags. She didn't believe that. She just kept saying, no, this can't be true. And she aged 10 years in that moment.
Wow.
And I talked to my mum about this from time to time. For anyone out there who's lost someone, anniversaries and birthdays are a time to, especially, not only, but especially to reflect upon and speak of the person that we've lost. And my mum at those times still reports back saying that she feels guilty. She feels like it's her fault. She feels like she could have done more. She feels like, why didn't she know? Why didn't, all of these questions. And of course, how can you know? It's hard. It's especially hard in that message that you began with, Brent, about saying something or asking for help or just alerting someone that you know in whatever way that you can that maybe you're hurting and that maybe you don't even know how to communicate it. But just do whatever it is that you can to let the people know around you that you do need some help and support. There are amazing services out there that do really, really great work. And so that's certainly the message. But yeah, with my mum, I remember 30 years ago thinking to myself, maybe it was 29 years ago, it was some time after my sister had passed and we'd had the funeral and we were healing. And I remember thinking to myself, I couldn't understand how anyone would take their life and create such pain for those around them. And that was a belief that formed in me. And surprisingly enough, I had my own period, which was 15 years ago now, 16 years ago now for me, where I have no history of any mental illness. I have no history of depression, anxiety, and it kind of snuck up on me. I would say that from within a 3-month period, I went from what most would describe as a healthy, well-functioning, reasonably successful, stable, married, children, business, home, career, middle class, kicking goals, to 3 months later being in such a downward hole. And I honestly don't even know how I got there. It kind of grew. Mm-hmm. The darkness grew, and I found myself, Brent, being overwhelmed by the thoughts of taking my own life, even though for the prior 15 years I had this belief that that's a crazy thing to do. How could anyone do that to the people around them? That was the long-held belief that I had up until, of course, the time that it happened to me. It was unexpected. I can recognize now that I certainly didn't ask for help. early on. So perhaps my message in that is kill the monster early.
Yep.
You feel something coming on, maybe just you know that you would know it in yourself when you just don't feel 100% right. You may not be able to articulate it. You may not be able to communicate it in a way that makes any sense to anybody, but you'll know it in yourself. And my encouragement is that at that point in time, reach out. Don't wait till it's too late, until that voice in your head says, or comes up with some harebrained schemes that somehow make you believe that the world and everyone that you know will be better off without you.
Mm-hmm. No, I know what you're talking about. So, thanks for sharing your experience with suicide. I know exactly what you mean. My little sister tried it when she was 19. Didn't work, but she had a series. Pretty much when Mum passed in 1996, she suffered straight away. Mental illness kicked in pretty quickly. Tried to take her life at 19, and then she did succeed at 33. So, mental health really got to her. Schizophrenia in the end. And actually, when I got the call when she'd passed, I thought, well, she's relieved now, but I'd rather her still be around. So that's how I dealt with it. She had a tough life for 21 years, and I actually don't know how she survived that long, but yeah, it's not easy. And I'm sure we've all had a fleeting moment about suicide, and no one really talks about the fleeting moments. But I remember the day that my mum passed, I was in Broadford, got the phone call 9:30 a.m, like you, remember it like yesterday. Drove home to Cobram, 5 minutes out. I cried the whole way. I don't know how I saw. I had a 4-second quarter-mile car at the time, really fast, and I was going to go and smash into this pole. Well, that's it. I can't survive without my mum. I sped up to 240 k's an hour, was going to hit this pole, and then last second, I just said, oh, who's going to look after my little sister? So I just stopped, pulled over, turned the car off, sat there for a bit, then drove back home at about 60 k's an hour. So I'm sure everyone has those fleeting moments, but you got to be able to make a split decision straight away, and that's what I did. So that's my own personal experience with it for myself. But I love what you're doing here to help men and others. So tell me a bit more about Man Online.
Yeah, certainly. And I like what you touched on there too, regarding protective factors. For you, it was your little sister, and for many people, it's their children. It's a partner, it's a career, it's a pet even.
Yeah.
So, yeah, think of your protective factor. Think of those that you love, and like you clicked your fingers there and just said you made a decision to stay around, and congratulations, it's a really beautiful decision.
Thanks, James.
Yeah, we know that men get themselves in talking about men today doesn't minimize in any way the issues that women face. In fact, I think it really helps to support that, even because when men operate in healthy masculinity and with communities of healthy masculine men, that's a wonderful situation for all people. Today, focusing on men, as we're talking about Man Online, which is an initiative for men, we know that one of the key challenges that men face is social isolation.
Loneliness, is what you mean?
Loneliness.
Yep.
Well, loneliness is a symptom of social isolation. Social isolation is, that's a bit of a mouthful.
Yeah, it is. Give some
seashells at the seashore. Social isolation is, if you hold up your hand and you have 5 fingers, if you run out of fingers before you run out of really close, trusted confidants in your world, that are there for you and you're there for them, that's social isolation. If you have 5 or less trusted confidants in your world.
Yep.
And the statistics show from Beyond Blue, Lifeline, Men's Helpline, Men's Australian Men's Health Forum, various organisations show a version of the same stat. And the number of men between the ages of 30 to 65 that have less than 5 confidants that equals social isolation is 1 in 3. And that works out to be approximately 1.1 million men that are technically socially isolated.
In Australia?
In Australia. 1.1 million men.
Wow. So Man Online sounds like it might be about creating a community to talk.
Absolutely.
Even just to make friends.
Absolutely.
Is that right?
Man Online, for those that haven't heard about it, is a network of online men's groups for men, by men, talking men's stuff. And you hit the nail on the head. It's all about creating a community. And it's one of many. There's many communities that men can get involved in. Sports clubs, online groups, men's groups that meet in person, men's groups that meet online. One of the beauties of the online model, the reason I decided to go down this path of online, is that we know that men in regional and rural areas are far more likely to be in a position of being socially isolated. They are perhaps more conscious of gossip within their community. And so it's difficult, or can be difficult. Men report that it's difficult to pull up out the front of the psychologist's office in a small town of 3 or 4 or 500 or 3 or 4,000, and where everyone knows your business. And so that means that there's men and people in smaller communities are less likely to reach out for help because of the social stigma.
Yep.
So being online means that we can have a man, and these group sizes are 6 to 8 men with a facilitator. We can have a man we have 8 states and territories. We can have a man out of each state. A man from Ballarat can be in a group with a man from Bathurst and a man from Bundaberg and a man from Bunbury and a man from Burnie. And which state have I missed there?
Just anywhere.
Anywhere, any state. A man in Brazil, right? So, and one of the beauties of that is we know that that if you have men who are not in a direct social group connecting with each other, a funny thing happens, Brent. They're actually much more likely to share what's going on. And the reason for that is it's difficult to talk about your relationship issues with your brother-in-law. It's difficult to talk about your financial situation in your business with your employees. Hey, folks, we had another month where we didn't make any money, and we're quite concerned about the longevity of this business. I hope you're enjoying working here. I don't want to scare you in any way, right? So it is very difficult to have those types of conversations with your intimate circle, relationships, business, health. Every person out there's probably heard a man say, I'm good. I'm okay. I am good. Everything's fine, right? And the truth of that is that that's automated man talk.
Yeah,
it doesn't necessarily mean that a man's good or he's okay. He's going to tell you that he's okay. So from a confidentiality perspective, if you're connecting men who don't share the same social network, don't work in the same workplace, it's highly unlikely. Of course, we're all very connected these days with the internet, social media, and so forth. But it's highly unlikely that these men are going to cross paths in the street. It's highly unlikely that they have more than one, if any, common connection. And they share, Brent. They're open, they're vulnerable. So often a man opens with, he'll say something like, I've never shared this with anyone before. And this is like session 1 or session 2. These men meet on a fortnightly basis for 90 minutes. It's a closed group. It's ongoing. It's closed once the men form a group. And they become trusted confidants very quickly, very open, very vulnerable. And you'll often hear things like, oh, me too, or I felt that way, or yeah, that's going on for me. And the men will leave the session reporting back saying things like, I'm glad I'm not the only one, or it's comforting, it's reassuring to know that I'm not the only person going through this situation.
Yep. Yeah, I understand what you mean. I come from a small town of 4,000 people, Cobram, and small town syndrome. And like, I haven't lived there for 30-something years. And I quit the bank like 18 years ago. But when I still go back home, people say, you're still working in the bank. So they remember everything from when I was young. And they still relate those stories. That's really small town syndrome working. So that's why I love Melbourne, because I don't like the small town syndrome. But yeah, I understand what you mean, the group of 5. So I'm lucky that I've got a lot of people I can talk to about anything, and some people out there that haven't. And I remember at Business Mastery 2017, there's this guy there, and he was one of those guys that you speak about. I can't remember his name, but I could just tell that he was a loner and he had no one, and he didn't even want to sit with anyone or work with anyone in group tasks in the Tony Robbins Business Mastery. And I actually felt very sorry for him, but I just went and spoke to him. So I've actually seen an example of the people you're talking about out there in the community. And just got to be able to speak up as a man and not make sense. Doesn't have to make sense.
Well,
just get it
depends
out.
on who you ask. We as men don't make sense anyway. So.
That's what women would say. We say the same about them, James.
It is. It makes me think of the book by John Gray, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, and it can be that way sometimes, can't it?
Oh yeah, that's the most confusing book ever. Actually, that's the only book I've actually thrown out in the bin.
Really?
Yeah. I know it's got multiple awards and sold a lot of books, but I'm reading it like when I'm 27 going, don't get it, threw it out.
Well, there you go. I like the point that you made on not everybody has that group, that trusted 5. And what can they do about that? Well, if it's true that there's 1.1 million men who are feeling some level of social isolation, Google will show, Australian statistics show that around about 590 men per month Google men's support groups. They're Googling for a men's support group or man support group or groups supporting men.
Yep.
And if my maths is right, that works out to be around about 7,000 men per year, or 7,000 unique searches, maybe not only by men. And that's a lot less than 1.1 million. So there's still roughly 1.1 million men who feel socially isolated to some degree. And we know that social isolation is that's the tip of the iceberg, and what you don't see necessarily, what happens under the iceberg, to use that metaphor, is you have this cascade of events. When you feel socially isolated and you start to believe that you're socially isolated, you act socially isolated. You talk less, you communicate with less, you attend less events, online or in person. You are maybe not as engaged in your social media. You might not answer your phone as much. You might not respond to a text message so quickly. So if that's you, please know that just Google men's support groups. There will be a group for you, that I assure you of. If you can't find a group, I'll personally help you find a group. Reach out to me via Brent here. I'll personally take on that challenge to find a group that suits you. We know that men are far more likely to be engaged in groups that have some kind of social connotation and have formed in some version of commonality. What I mean by commonality is it might be men getting together who've recently gone through a divorce. It might be men getting together who've become new dads and they're navigating that part of their journey. It might be men who are contemplating retirement. They might be in their 50s and 60s, and that's the commonality for them. It might be men who like sailing, fishing, four-wheel driving, playing poker, drinking coffee, whatever it is, AFL footy, you name it, golf, right? You're a huge golf fan and coach. And if you have the basis of something to talk about at a social, personal level, we find that men will really gel together very well. We know that there's the expression that we will do business with people that we know, like, and trust.
Yeah, that's right.
And we'll also share our stories in our lives with people that we know, like, and trust. We trust people who have similar interests. If you like golf and I like golf, we must both be great blokes.
That's right.
If you like fishing and I like fishing, well, then that's great. And so there's many groups out there that are founded on the basis of commonality. And again, I offer, if you can't find one, I'll find one for you, and I'll be very willing to find a group that suits you very well.
But haven't you got a group that you're setting up?
I do. I have a program that I've created. The name of it is Man Online, MAN Online, all one word. And the MAN is an acronym, and it stands for Men's Accountability Network, because men like to be accountable. And within that, it's a network of online men's groups. The men come together in groups of between 6 and 8 men. They meet fortnightly for 90 minutes. There's a different topic each time as conversation starters. So, Brent, we talk about topics, men-centric topics like stress, anger, fathers, addictions, porn, alcohol, otherwise. We talk about work-life blend. We talk about our intimate partners, male or female. We talk about our children, youngies and teenagers and empty nesters, and so you name it. There's a man-centric topic that's one topic per session. We use them as conversation starters, and the men open up very quickly, and they'll very openly talk to those topics and how it affects them. They'll cross-pollinate with each other ideas on how to mitigate or overcome. They'll share resources, just like you did before. They'll talk about a particular book. They'll talk about a particular podcast. They'll speak to programs that are available, friends that they can connect each other with. And that's the power of a peer support network, peer-to-peer, shoulder-to-shoulder, men supporting each other.
Yeah, that makes sense. The a midlife crisis, I went through it when I was about 42, I reckon. It normally happens around your 40s. And guys out there and girls, this is just common. It's just what happens. Got to this stage and I've gone, okay, all my bucket list items are ticked off. I've done everything I want to do in life. And I went through a period, I don't know, probably 2 or 3 months. What do I do now? Because I've actually done everything. But all I did, I just sat in it for a while. I didn't do anything silly. And I just invented some more things I hadn't put some more things on my bucket list I hadn't done yet. So just want to let all the guys out there and let them know that's actually normal, where you get to a point, I've done everything I wanted to do, and now there's nothing to do. I went through that, but I sat in it, allowed it, and then I just came out the other side when I was ready. but I didn't do anything silly in that meantime. But I'm very self-aware. So, just let people know that's normal, because some people might not know about midlife crisis. They might not know that it's normal. And one of the things that, especially when you talk about man and wife, actually, I'll talk about it. I've got a close friend I've known for a lot of years, about 30 years, and he pretty much has to look after his wife and two young kids. They're about 5 years of age, full time. She's waiting for a lung replacement. And I talk to him now and again, because it's not easy, because when everyone comes around the house, they're all, how are you? How are you? Like his wife. It's not about how is he, how is he. So my mate's got a sick wife, we'll call it, and no one's asking how he is. So I just make sure I stay in touch with him every month or so. I just say, how are you, mate? I don't even ask about her. And if he wants to talk about it, he will, but I just reach out and have a chat to him, because he's been doing this for 2 years now, and it's hard. But he's masculine man. His arms are bigger than my legs, and he's a really good bloke. We have a laugh. So I'm really close with Glenn, and I just spoke to him last night, actually. So, yeah, that's a struggle in my close network of friends that he's been going through. So you'll be surprised what people are going through if you only asked. So, yeah, I love what you're doing here. Man Online, I love it. I want to jump on board. James, I'm going to jump on board and see if we can collaborate somehow.
Yeah, I really like that idea. If you go to the website, manonline.com.au, the key call to action is come and attend a free pilot session. A pilot session is an opportunity to look under the hood and see what we're doing, and we love having guests come along, guests and visitors. So go to the website and feel free to book a time that suits you. There's a pilot session on at least once a week, typically in the evenings. It'd be great to have you along, Brent.
Yep.
And yeah, I really like what you said there about asking, and the concept of "Are you okay?" day. I think is a concept that we can embrace on any day.
It's a day, yeah.
And noticing small changes in the behavior of people that are close to you. Someone that often responds fast by text that suddenly you don't kind of hear from for a few days.
Yeah.
A person who's regularly clean shaven and suddenly they've got a little bit of 5 o'clock shadow going on, and just these little signs can be a great trigger for you to ask the question, are you okay? And remember that the first response is probably automatic. So, Brent, if I say to you, are you okay? You'll say,
I'm excellent, is what I say.
Yeah, I'm excellent. I'm good. Yeah, I'm good. I'm great. I'm excellent. I'm fine. I'm okay, mate. You know, whatever it is. It's an automated response. We get into, like, how often do you actually think about? Well, firstly, I think it's just the question, "How are you?" is a courtesy. It's etiquette to ask. When you're asking it, are you genuinely interested in how the other person is, to some degree? And I think that if you have the opportunity, especially for those close to you, to ask it for a second time, you know, how are you really? How are you really doing?
Yeah, that's right. And how are you good is conditioned by society. It's conditioned from when you're under the age of 7 when we get conditioned.
Conditioned response.
And when you go to the supermarket next time, if you talk to the chick or the guy at the checkout counter, they'll say, yeah, they're good. Everyone says it. I notice it. So I say I'm excellent, and they go, what? Why is he excellent?
Yeah,
I want some of that.
The checkout young men and women usually, or the checkout person.
Yep.
Is often very surprised if you ask ask a question that you are genuinely interested in how their day's going. So they're like, oh, you actually really want to know? But yeah, I think there's a lot of gold in digging, in actually digging for how are you really, and I think a really great strategy to elicit from the other person how they're doing is to share a vulnerability. And that might sound like, well, for me, my week's been pretty tough. You know, I have a 16-year-old daughter, and I am not bringing the best of me to that relationship every single day, and it's hard. And I went to bed last night, and I'd said some things that were probably not my best work. And in sharing that, someone else might say, yeah, I had a similar experience, or yeah, actually something's not going so well for me. So being able to open with vulnerability provides the landscape for the other person to reciprocate equally.
Yeah, that makes sense. But when you think about it, no one gave you a handbook how to be a perfect dad, did they?
No, no, children did not. I'm still waiting. I think we need Amazon here to deliver some parenting handbooks. So I didn't get one, and I don't. If anyone out there does have one, please get in touch.
They don't exist, I'm sure. I listened to something really interesting on Audible the other day. It was called Power of Focus, and he talks a lot about like dope. Didn't mention the word dopamine, but I know what he means. But getting off this damn thing and the stress and anxiety that it causes, and he's got some really good tips there on how not to use this thing, how to get off it, how everyone, how all Google and Facebook, how they market themselves, so they do everything to make you keep scrolling, basically, and all the algorithms. So it's really interesting. So if you've got a kid, or if you want to get off technology or this thing, pretty sure it's called Power of Focus. On Audible. So, yeah, very interesting. So
good to know. I'll check that out.
Now, I want to ask you one more question. So, if someone is thinking about taking their life now, who should they call?
Well, there's a number of options for them. I would say start off with 000.
000, police, Lifeline?
Absolutely. So
Beyond
there's
Blue?
Lifeline, Beyond Blue, Men's Helpline. There's an abundance of numbers. And whoever it is that you call, know that the person at the other end will be very well trained. They will be able to support you in any way that you need. And if you are feeling that way inclined, know that when you're not feeling your best by far, sometimes it can feel like climbing Mount Everest just to pick up the phone.
Yeah.
And know that it's worth it, that you're worth it.
Yeah.
And that there are, sometimes you can trick yourself in the false belief that there's no one around who cares. And the truth is that everyone cares. Everyone around you cares. And the world is a better place with you in it.
Yeah, and there's a saying I use with my clients. I just say, strangers actually care more than the people you know. I remember, this is about 6 years ago, walking down the street in my suit in Cranbourne. For people who know Cranbourne, you know what the town's like. And it was out lunchtime, and I was gasping there, holding my chest. I felt like I was going to faint in the street. And this guy was walking past, and I actually think he was homeless. And he said, "Are you okay, mate? There's anything I can do for you?" I said, No, I'm just struggling with my breath, but I really appreciate you asking. So I didn't know this guy, and most people wouldn't give this guy the time of day, but he actually cared about me because he could see at lunchtime that I was struggling to breathe. And strangers care. And while we're talking about socially unavailable, I guess, especially I don't like to talk about this topic much, but I'll just touch on it briefly. At lockdown, I'm an extrovert, and I think you know that, James. And when we were locked down for about 6 months, with what goes on, it sort of turned me a bit inward. But what happened, but I noticed what I do and I went and saw some friends that lived across the road from my mate's house, but I caught myself out. I wasn't looking at their eyes. I was looking at the ground. I never do that. And I'm just going, what am I doing? So the social conditioning of lockdown has made people go, it really changed. I'm going, what? I'm always looking at people, and today I'm not. But I caught myself out, and I just stayed in that, went home and thought about it. But after that, I just went back to looking at people's eyes again. So you can be actually unaware of what you're doing, but I have high awareness.
And I think what you're talking about there too is a fitness. We can become non-match fit with. We're social creatures, and we crave connection in various ways, in very individual ways, and it can be difficult when we don't have those opportunities, and we can become quite unmatched fit. And like you said, an extrovert that became an introvert, it's scary. You've got to recondition yourself to get back out there, get re-engaged. I don't know if you've been on the roads recently. I think that many drivers are unfit.
They can't drive. And
in terms of having not driven anywhere near as much in the last 2 years. I'll put my hand up. I know that some of the times that I was driving, it's like, wow, this is, I've kind of forgotten some of the things that I do that make me a great driver, such as staying in my lane, such as indicating, such as not hitting curbs, right? And it's funny, I think that I drove 5,000 Ks or less across 2 years. Wow. And I'm sure that there's many people out there that did the same or even less. And that's a lot less kilometres than I would normally do. And I think that, lockdowns created some less than match fitness for us in many areas. So what's the advice there, Brent?
What's the advice? Well, jump on Man Online. If you need some help, just go there. manonline.com.au.
We'll get you driving fit.
But I'm just saying that people, I'm aware because I'm a life coach, I guess, and I'm aware of what I do and how I am and all that sort of stuff. And I caught myself out after 6 months, but I'm lucky. I've got a really close network of friends, and my best mate ever, g'day, Steve. And we spoke about this when we were like 18, 19. And this is life. Life is like a heart rate monitor. You have ups and downs. And all we ever say, and we've said it to each other over time, but it sticks in my memory. And I don't know if you know what I'm about to say, James, but life's full of up and downs, but you got to appreciate the downs so you can appreciate the ups. And that's just the way life works. It's not going to be totally up. It's not going to be totally down, but that's life. And it's just how to handle the ebbs and flows. I like
that metaphor. It's really great. It's kind of like saying light and dark, right? If everything was constantly light, you don't necessarily notice. If you in the middle of the day, if you turn on a flashlight, you don't notice it. In the middle of the night, if you turn on a flashlight, it's contrastly different. So, the downs can help you to appreciate the ups. The ups can help you to recognize the downs. And just like a storm that doesn't last forever. Storms pass. And I thought of this metaphor on the question that you asked before. If somebody was contemplating taking their life, we know the expression that it's a permanent solution to a temporary problem. Keep in mind that it's a storm and the storm will pass. And what comes after the storm? The sunshine.
Sunshine.
And that's your ups.
Yeah, correct. All right, well, I'd like to thank James from manonline.com.au for coming on to the podcast today. Please reach out to your family or friends if you're struggling in life, and I know a lot of people are. We've got also other support groups, Beyond Blue and Lifeline, the two I know of. I wouldn't call 000, probably too many people on that number. But thanks for coming on, James. Is there something you want to finish with?
Yeah, I like the message of to let your listeners know that it's okay to ask for help. Asking for help isn't a sign of weakness. It's a sign of courage. Courage of knowing your limitations and knowing that there's people out there who are willing and able and capable and wanting to help. You're valuable. Please ask for help if you need it.
Yeah, and I just remembered this story. It's true, but when my mum passed, one of her best friends she went to school with, and that's my best friend's dad. Mum passed in 96, and I actually went to Laurie and I said, Laurie, I need help. Since Mum died, I haven't been the same. Can you help me? And this started my self-development journey. So I hadn't done anything, but he gave me this book. He said, Brent, I cried my ass off. That's what I remember, at his house. And his wife was there. And he said, I want you to read this book. And then when you read it, tell me what you learnt. And now I've read this book since, and it doesn't make as much sense, but it made a lot of sense back then. But it's the biggest selling book of all time, How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. And the learning I got from that is, what's the most important word in the English language? Do you know what it is, James?
You.
Your name.
Your name.
Your name. So that's correct. So ever since that day, that really started my self-development journey after Mum passed. But it took me 2 to 4 years to recover from that because it was pretty traumatic. But since that day, I make a point of remembering everyone's name. I mightn't see someone for 10 years, but I'll remember the name. They go, how do you remember? I said, did something on the day, word association, remember it. And I just make a point of always remembering people's names. But that changed my life, reading that book. But I reached out. I remember Anne asked another man for help. And I cried. So what? He knew my mum, so it was okay.
Well, in sharing your story there, Brent, I am absolutely sure that someone listening to that now has permission to reach out and ask for help and share theirs.
Yeah, that's right. Thanks, James.
Thanks, Brent.